So one of the things that BB King is of course known for is his very distinct and specific vibrato. And we're going to get into exactly what makes BB King's vibrato special, but before we do, let's discuss vibrato in more general terms. Simply put, vibrato is the manipulation of pitch up or down. That's all it is. And we have two main types of vibrato with guitar. We have finger vibrato and we have whammy bar vibrato, which I'll show you in a second. When it comes to finger vibrato, we can only control two variables. And this is going to be the most important thing because BB King didn't use whammy bars, he used his finger for vibrato. So when it comes to finger vibrato, we can only control two variables. The two variables are number one, the speed of the pitch. So for example, you can play a vibrato with a very slow speed like this. Or you can do it much faster. And of course, you can do everything in between. Speed, fairly simple. The second variable we can control is how sharp the pitch goes when we play vibrato. And this is where the misconceptions come in. When it comes to finger vibrato, always remember we can only ever make the pitch go sharp. We cannot make the pitch go flat. So whenever you hear people say fancy things like I like to move my finger up and down like this, or I only move down, or I only move up, none of that matters when it comes to finger vibrato because we can only make the pitch go up. And the reason we can only make the pitch go up is because when you think about it, what we're doing when we play vibrato is we're adding more tension to the string, almost like we're turning the tuner up. And if we're adding more tension, we can only make the pitch go up. We have no way of decreasing tension with our finger vibrato. Now, if we have a guitar equipped with a whammy bar, we now have the ability to increase tension by pulling the bar up, or we can decrease tension by pushing the bar down. And because of that, we can do vibrato up or down, like this, up, or down. Or we can go in between, up and down. So now that we understand how finger vibrato works, you should feel a lot more comfortable using whatever technique feels comfortable to you. If you like to push the string up and you find that this is comfortable, then you can do it that way. If you find that pulling the string down is more comfortable, you can do it that way. You can also rock your finger left and right. And when you do it that way, you don't actually increase the pitch much. It's very, very subtle. It's a very short vibrato if you do it that way. But when you bend the string, you have more control of how high you make the pitch. Now, the thing that made BB King's vibrato special is that it was number one, very fast, and number two, it was very short. And in terms of the technique, he would do a technique where basically it was a mix of bending the string up and down and also rocking his hand. So basically he would anchor only his finger to the fretboard and to the string. The rest of his hand would stay completely off the guitar, and he would use the weight of his hand to rock like this very fast. Now, I honestly find that most people who imitate BB King's vibrato don't do it the same way he did because his technique is very specific to him, and you can get the same sound in ways that are easier for other players. I find that if I just think about pulling my finger down while also having the rest of my hand off the guitar like this, I can get very close to the BB King style vibrato, and that's the way that I like to do it if I go to use it. Now, the thing that people don't realize about BB King's vibrato that is also extremely important to his technique is that from the second he plucks the note until the second the note ends, there's vibrato the entire way throughout the entire pitch. And this is different from a lot of other guitar players. So here's a way that a guitar player will usually use vibrato. They'll play a lick. See what I did there? I got to the note, I played it. I let it sustain straight for a little while. And then when I'm ready, I add in the vibrato. When B.B. King plays vibrato, the second he plucks the note, the vibrato is going already and it goes for the whole length of the pitch in the exact same way. The second you hit that pitch, the vibrato starts, and then it goes the full length of the pitch itself. And again, it doesn't matter what technique you use to get there as long as it's comfortable to you. But I'll say it one more time, I don't believe the greatness of B.B. King is held in his vibrato. It's held in a lot of other things. So work on the vibrato that you think sounds nice, that you think sounds musical. And if you feel like it has to be B.B. King style, then fine, you can use his style, but there's nothing wrong with using your own style and using other aspects of B.B. King's style of playing. All right, so now we're on to B.B. King's bending, and I have it notated other places for you, some of the ways he bended some of the exact licks, and I'm going to show you some of that right now. But instead of focusing on the exact licks, we're going to focus on the technique and when he did it and different variations he had. So we're going to go back to our BB box in the key of C. And we're going to talk about his bending. So in general, it's a good idea to practice doing a few different types of bends. You should be able to bend a half step up, a whole step up, and I think you should also be able to bend a minor third up. And those are the three bends that B.B. King used in the BB box on the B string most commonly. And when it comes to playing this type of bend in general, you'll notice we're bending from the second to either the minor third or the major third. And one of the cool things about the blues is playing with that idea between the minor third and the major third. That little area is fun to mess with in the blues. So B.B. King would often bend somewhere in between those two pitches. So I don't want to say it doesn't matter what note you actually bend to, because of course it matters, but you have a lot of things you can do in between those two pitches. In the BB box on the high E string, he often did a couple different bends. One is this very difficult, tricky first finger bend right here. It was usually a half step, but sometimes it was also a whole step. So that's one thing he often did. And then he also did a whole step bend and a minor third bend from this note. So those are the basic bends that he used the most. But there was so much nuance in the way that he bended. So now let's get into some of the unique things that B.B. King did with his bending that people almost never talk about. The first thing that I noticed is that B.B. King will often bend a note and mute it before it reaches its target pitch. And this is a concept that I first learned when studying Indian classical music. If you don't know, Indian classical music has definitely the most detailed and defined theory on bending notes and sliding notes. And B.B. King does things they do in that genre of music as well. So here's an example. If I want to bend from here to here, I could just bend there. But you'll also notice if I just start bending and I mute the string before it reaches that pitch, you will still hear the target pitch. You're probably hearing, but each time I was either a little bit sharp or a little bit flat of the actual note. And this is really useful because number one, it sounds a lot more musical than just always bending right to the note. And number two, it gives us a little bit of a leeway with how in tune we have to be. Now, of course, you want to practice bending in tune. You want to practice things like this. You want to do stuff like that, of course. But in the heat of the moment, sometimes you're going to be a little bit flat. Sometimes you're going to be a little bit sharp. And if you just mute the pitch on the way up, it kind of obscures the exact note. Your brain or the audience's brain automatically hears the correct note. And in my opinion, it also sounds a bit more musical, and it gives you a little bit of a variation you can use when you're improvising. So B.B. King would often bend to a note, mute it before it reached the top pitch, and then he would pluck the top note and bend back down. So something like this. And in both instances, I never actually played the correct pitch. So it was never this. It was always a little bit sharp or a little bit flat. But since we mute on the way up, and since we only play that top note for a brief second before we start bending back down, you, the listener, never hears it as out of tune. And I'll say it again, it actually sounds more musical than always doing it this way. So that's one thing that B.B. King often would do. And another really beautiful thing B.B. King would often do is he would start bending the note before he plucked the string. So instead of this, sometimes it will be this. See, the note is already in motion when I pluck. Rather than. So that's something else you can mess with as well. And of course, he bent all at different speeds. So sometimes he would bend very slow. Sometimes he would bend fast. And everything in between, of course. And the final thing that we need to work on as well is bending and using vibrato. So combining a bend and vibrato. So we bend up to the note. And then we have vibrato. And the best way to do this is to bend up to the note and then for the vibrato, come below the note and go back up. So we don't want to go above the note and come back down. That's going to make it sound out of tune. We want to go from below to up and then the vibrato from below to up, not from above to below. So here's what it would sound like with above to below, which sounds more out of tune. And here it is from below to above. It sounds more in tune. So those are a few of the things that made B.B. King's bending very unique. And again, as we get into the breakdown, I'll show you all of the little examples of where that happens. All right, so now we're going to get into breaking down B.B. King's vibrato and bends in the exact context, the real world situations where he has used it. And for this analysis, we're using a performance that he did on a lesson video. And that's because, in my opinion, this is some of B.B. King's best use of bending and vibrato that I could find literally anywhere. And the quality is also fantastic, so you'll be able to hear all the intricacies. Now, I recommend that you actually go through and learn this melody. It's only going to be, 2 choruses, so it's not going to be very long. And if you actually go and learn this melody, you will just kind of absorb a lot of this information a bit more naturally, and it will come out in your other playing. But even if you don't want to learn it note for note like I'm going to show you, you should still feel free to watch this video and follow along, take out your guitar, and just experiment and pause the video along the way. So let's get right into it. So even with just those first two notes, we already have things to talk about. So that first note is a very fat, not exactly accented, but it's a nice fat note. And then we have the bend, the full step bend. And then we get a very light pluck at the top of the bend. And so the thing you should take away from this first part is, of course, the dynamics. We have a pluck, a bend, and then the second pluck at the top is very light. And then we mute right after the pluck. Now, this is another really beautiful lick, and it illustrates one of B.B. King's secrets, I'll say, and that is using accented notes for straight notes or regular played notes, and then having a lot softer of a pluck when it comes to using vibrato and bends. So the lick is... So you'll notice those three straight notes are fairly accented. And then we have our bend. And this is a case where B.B. King bends up and he mutes the note before we get to the top pitch. Then we have another soft pluck and coming back down. So both of the bent notes had very gentle plucks, and all of the regular notes had accented plucks. And having that dynamic between the two really helps to make those bends sound even sweeter.
I feel like I'm talking to the person.
And here, I want to point out the fact that this is the first time we're actually getting B.B. King's vibrato. A lot of people think that B.B. King just bends everywhere and uses vibrato all the time, but you'll see that we got this far and we're just now getting vibrato for the first time. You'll also notice that the first note he plays is a bit more accented. Now, I'm doing my vibrato because I don't really sound good doing the B.B. King style vibrato, but again, the point is here, somewhat accented note, lighter note, very light note on the vibrato, and then another stroke as well.
I feel like I'm talking to the person.
Now, this is a phrase that when I was learning this for the first time, it took me forever to fully understand. I'll play it one more time.
I feel like I'm talking to the person.
So I'll just teach you what it is first. So we're going to get a bend, a mute, then we're going to play our note. We're going to hammer on very lightly and then pluck that note back to the root note vibrato. And the thing that took me forever to actually hear is that little hammered on ghost note. But those are the little details that we can throw into our playing to make it sound a bit more musical. Very, very quick, very, very subtle, but it really adds something.